Welcome, everyone. My name is Brian Meyer. I'm chairperson of the Riders Advisory Council. I call this meeting of the RAC on September 7th, 2022 to order at 6:08 p.m. Welcome, everyone. I will now have John call the roll.
Okay, sorry about the delay. Daryl Brewer.
Yes, I'm here.
Jose Del Cid. Jose? Okay. Majela Fernando. Mahela?
Here. Here.
Mike Leibowitz.
Here.
Brian Meyer.
Here.
Marcelo Moreno.
Here.
Pat Sheehan.
Here.
Cole Stout. Here. Charmaine Todman Nwanji. Andrew Choi.
Hi, it's Andrew.
Great. And Emma Wormser.
Here.
All right, wonderful. Brian, you have a quorum, so you can go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I motion that we approve the agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The agenda is approved. We'll now open it up to public comment. This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on any concerns or comments that they have generally about the WMATA system. Hearing none, we will move on to our next part of the agenda, and that is that we have the the privilege to welcome WMATA's General Manager and CEO, Randy Clark. Randy, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us. I know it was a privilege being able to attend your swearing-in ceremony back in, I guess it was July, right? Also my first time here in the new headquarters, so welcome. Back to the DC area, and we're really excited to hear from you and your vision for our public transportation system that is so vital to millions of people in the region. And furthermore, I know we've talked about this in the past. We're looking forward to ways in which we can, the RAC can further help advocate for the riders and the public more generally. And so I will hand it over to you so you can introduce your team. And again, thank you all so much for coming as well and taking time out of your evening to be able to speak with us. And with that said, I'll give you the floor, Randy. Thank you so much.
Great. I think that's working. Good. Okay. Well, thank you, Chair. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. It's exciting to be with you all because at the end of the day, the reason we exist is for our customers. And so, yes, I do want to figure out ways that we can amplify the work you do and bring a closer connection to, I think, the team. I think to symbolically or demonstrate that, I have a lot of our key leadership team here from operations. And so what I think might be valuable is, first, I guess I'll introduce Barbara Moulton, and then I'll introduce Brian. I'll ask Brian to just kind of introduce a little bit of his team. And we want to figure out ways that the team is here on a consistent basis. So A, there'll be topics that we have to work through, but B, actual leadership of operations so we can hear as direct as possible from you all. Was it good service, though? Great Metro service. We're happy to hear that. Thank you, board member. Good seeing you. Oh, yeah. So Barbara Moulton, many people may know Barbara. Barbara is currently our acting SVP of Communications and Marketing. And Barbara has a really important role, not just with this big long title there, but her job is to oversee our customer contact And that's whether you're on social media or picking up the phone, you need trip planning, you have a compliment or you have a complaint, you name it. Barbara's team is intercepting those and trying to resolve topics. And I wanted to make sure Barbara was here. And we want to, again, create this better interface between taking in information and doing the 360 circle back, so people not only are being heard, they understand what they're saying has actual tangible interaction. So with that, I also want to introduce our new Chief Operating Officer, Brian Dwyer. And so Brian has been in the business for a long time, and that's just my way of saying seasoned, not old, as he would joke with me, because we've gone through a couple things over the career. But Brian is a very seasoned transit professional, both on the rail and the bus side, significant background in operations and operational safety specifically, and he's a natural collaborator by nature. So Brian comes from us from a consulting in his last background, but also has had a lot of career at the MBTA in Boston, but has done safety audits and operational peer reviews at dozens of properties in North America or I should say America, Canada, and Asia as well. So Brian, maybe you just take a quick second, introduce the great members of your team, and then I'll go back to going through some stuff.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, folks. So as Randy mentioned, I think we're really trying to make sure that we have the requisite staff here with you folks for RAC meetings to make sure that we have genuine discussions about the operations. And rather than take notes and get back to you the next month with questions or answers to questions, I think we'd rather have a dialogue on a monthly basis about kind of issues that are important to you and our ridership generally. So as Randy mentioned, Greg Edwards right now is in charge of our transportation end of bus operations. He's acting right now as the head of bus operations. Mike Haas is the head of our rail operations. That is not only transportation and vehicle maintenance, but also systems track and a couple of other support departments. And Al Himes works on our bus scheduling and planning section. And as I'm sure you're all well aware, there's a great deal of planning and execution that goes into building schedules on a monthly or a quarterly or an annual basis. And I think Al and his team and the other folks involved in that are very focused on making sure that we provide the best service that we can to customers. And I know it's been well publicized in the paper about 7K return to service and our hopes for the improvement in service of that. We're focused both on the rail side and on the bus side. So we have a couple of matters going on longer term on the bus side that we'll address either this evening or at some point in the near future.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Are we able to deal with the feedback a little bit? You guys able to do that back there? You work on, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, team's here. Why don't I take a moment to go through a little bit about me, background, but kind of I think where I want to focus on as an agency, and then from there kind of open it up and have some dialogue. So as I mentioned, background, some people saw the bio, but I come at it from basically I've only been in transit my career. And actually, it's funny, tomorrow is my 15th anniversary, and I remind myself of how I met my wife on a subway train. And so I'll have to remember flowers tomorrow if she's watching. Yeah, the Metro Pass. But it's what I really love about transit is the ultimate equalizer in society. And what transit does best, it connects people to opportunity. And so whether you get into the doctor or a job or to school or going out and spending money, which fuels the economy, you name it, transit is the connector. So I'm really passionate about what we do because what we do really matters. And I'm really excited to be back here in the DMV, and why I think Metro is so important is the region knows how valuable Metro is. So we also have to be honest then when Metro isn't performing to the level that the region expects. I personally think this agency is much better than maybe some perception in the last X amount of months. I mean, you can read online all you want. It's been, there's been a lot of negativity recently. With that said, some is very, I will say deserved from a point of view of we've had some failings, but the organization is much better and the public should feel confident that this organization is much better off today than it was years ago. Our capital program has really invested significantly into the infrastructure, And so whether it's the tracks people ride on or the bus maintenance or you name it, we are at a high quality there, and that ultimately delivers great service for the community. But we also want to figure out how do we get better. And I don't want to get back to where we were. I want to be very clear. The goal for this agency is the best transit agency in America, and that's not debatable, period. We're the capital of the most powerful country in the history of time, and we need a transit agency that this region deserves to reflect the importance of this region to the world. And we have to do that at a very, very high level. And we're going to be focused on customer service excellence, because the only reason we exist, in my opinion, is customers. And so we have internal customers that we have to do a great job on to provide great service for our, external customers. So that's where we're going to be focused. I've said kind of organically that I'm going to be the customer champion because I'm on the system every day. All these individuals are on the system as well. We have a lot of Metro employees out on the system. You're going to see even more of that. We're going to be focused on transparency, which I think the organization has all acknowledged. We got to be a little bit better at that. And I hope in the last little bit, people have seen that. We need to be laser focused on the customer experience. And the customer experience is from the second you're on a curb, the whole journey planning through a station, the wayfinding, the elevator escalator, the lighting, the feel, real or perceived of safety. And what I mean by safety in that context is public safety. The interaction with a fare machine, the interaction with a station manager, the interaction with a bus operator, the AC on a vehicle, the heating on a vehicle coming up, to the frequency of the service, to the cleanliness, you name it, we need to excel at all of those things. So some of this is going to be from crawl, walk, run, and some of it's going to go right to running, but we're going to get there at every element, and we're going to transparently show where we are and where we're going to be, and over, we're going to do that and report out to the board and show where we are so the public can see where their dollars are going being spent on their community's transit system. So we're going to talk a lot more about it's your Metro. It's the community's Metro. It's not ours. We have this unique responsibility right now to run this agency on behalf of the community, but we need some community ownership of Metro too. We need people not to be Metro's this. We're all Metro, and we need people to feel that sense of ownership, and I think that will go a long way. A couple things that I know people want to really focus on today are things we have to work on. Obviously, 7Ks is a big topic for the agency in the region. That leads to frequency, big topic. Safety, security. I think more what we're hearing a lot on that, going around the meet and greets and just, and we got a customer survey out right now. I think mostly that's leading in the public perception of physical, if you will, public safety. I haven't had many people actually truly believe the system is not safe from a, if you will, safety of trains and buses. And the people that do feel that way, we're going to have to work to get them educated on how safe the system is. I use the system every day. My wife uses the system just like all these individuals use the system. I promise you, if I didn't think the system was safe, I would not be on the system. So, and you hear different things throughout time, right? People will tweet at me and say, the wheels fell off the 7K. The wheels have never fallen off a train, right? We had a derailment. A derailment and wheels falling off are not the same thing, right? Was that derailment serious? Of course. But the 7,000 fleet, we've also run over 400 million miles. So we got to start giving context around safety, and we are a very safe system. The 7Ks are actually a safer vehicle than the legacy fleet. They're built to be more crashworthiness, interior for injury prevention. They have cameras on board, high-end diagnostics for maintenance, and the reliability of the vehicle, I think, Mike, correct me if I got this wrong, it's like 400 times better reliability than a legacy car, and that means we don't have a disabled train and may have to evacuate people or get a rescue train. So, the system is safe. Does that mean we're ever going to be perfect at that? No. So we're going to have to develop a culture of continuous improvement. So it's okay to admit when we have a problem, and then we transparently go and address that problem. Bus network redesign is a huge thing for this region, right? So we were just talking about Al and all the scheduling work. We need, as a region, to come together what a true regional bus network looks like. And right now we have Metro and a lot of partners, and in some places that's really done well, and other places we have redundancies, and other places we have gaps. We need, as a region, to come together on that. Silver Line, every day we are getting closer to opening Silver Line. We've had a whole bunch of emergency drills. We are doing a lot of testing. We're almost into simulation of service. So I don't have a date today, but it is getting really close, and I can't wait for the board to be able to put out a special announcement related to a date. Potomac Yard Station, also coming along. This change that we're about to implement on Monday, we know it's going to be disruptive, especially, Alexandria, probably the hardest hit, a little bit of Arlington. It's going to be a little rough, but I think I'm really impressed by the shuttle plan and the alternative service plan that we kind of put together. I think it's going to work really well. Appreciate the city and county being just such good collaborators on so many partnership levels. So I'm going to be out there personally on helping with the shuttles. I think we're going to get through. At the other end of it, we're going to be able to get that day closer to that station opening. That is a very important station for the region. That's becoming a whole hub for cyber and education, and obviously Amazon, big employer. So we're really excited about that as well. So a bunch of things we are working on that have to get done. A couple things that I'm really proud of the team though. Orange Line. We opened the Orange Line yesterday, 5 stations. That's a $400 million plus investment back into more or less what looks like 5 brand new stations. And we fixed a lot of the elevated track structure, and really infrastructure that could lead to catastrophic safety failure has actually been addressed proactively without a failure. And the team did a really good job. Of course, we had a little hiccups day one, right? Where, we're coming back after 3 months. There's a couple little things. But generally speaking, we got through it, and today I think service was really good on the line, and we expect to go forward. We might have a couple little things here and there, but we're off to the races, and that's really good. We announced service increases yesterday, or what day is today? Thursday? Today is Wednesday. Thank you. That's a bad sign. I do that every week. I usually make it to Thursday before I ask. So I apologize. So we announced on two, and you know what? It's always when you have a holiday week, it just messes you up, right? Big time. So we announced on Tuesday our service increases. Are we 100% to the frequency level we want? Of course not, right? And we're not going to say we are, but we have noticeable service increases coming on the 12th. And we're going to, especially the Green Line, which is very, very transit dependent part of the community, we're really increasing service, so we're excited about that. And I think with the interlining or the overlapping of the lines, we're going to provide some really good service. We're also dropping the headways on the weekends down as well, and that'll help with the transfers. And now we got our 7Ks back on the red line as well. I was lucky enough to actually catch I caught a 7K on yellow today and a 7K on red. So they're about there. You're going to see more of them. And we want to, thank our partnership with the WMSC. It's been a really good collaborative relationship getting there. The last thing I want to mention was our customer contact. So one of the things I heard loud and clear was we need to do a better job of listening and be more responsive to our customers in real time. So I really appreciate what Barbara and her team have done. We announced about a week ago, probably over a week ago now, we stepped up our times that were much more interactive on social media and on customer calls. So we are staffed on weekends, which paid dividends because we had a trespasser actually the first day, if I recall, which then led to a lot better customer interaction and engagement and comms. And then we're also going a little bit later every night as well. So we're going to long-term work on a longer, kind of more holistic enterprise communications process. We're in the process of framing out a new control center as one of our buildings in Virginia. But crawl, walk, run, and I think we made a pretty good leap into a lot more, and I hope the RAC feels this way. In the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, we are much more engaging with the customers, and we're going to keep getting better at that. So I've said a lot of stuff, but I want to just ground what we're focused on. We want the RAC to be valuable to this organization. So we want to get you out on tours. We want to get you out, seeing things, whether it's control center or construction site. You got to get eyes and ears on what's going on so you could better represent the customers around the region. And you have access to the staff that actually moves the needle. And we're going to make sure that we have the representative people here every month to do that. I guess the last thing I will say is, I know you call it the RAC. And I've been questioned about this publicly a couple of times, like, why do you keep saying customer? And I really believe customer is important, because a customer is someone you're trying to earn their business. And even if the business is a $0 fare or $2 fare, it's not about the money. It's about we're trying to earn someone's wanting to use the system. And I've never heard of someone take a plane and be called a flyer. Right? So that's kind of a wonky transit term because we're like ridership and national transit database and all this kind of stuff. They're customers. And we got to treat everyone like they have the option to pick us, and we want to earn them picking us, whether they, fully do or not. So anyway, with that, Chair, back to you. Happy to take any comments, thoughts, and kind of move forward from there. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Randy. I really appreciate you laying out a vision on both the capital and operational sides with a focus towards improving the customer experience now and hopefully forever. I did also want to address that Dr. Helfer is here. Hello, Doctor. Welcome. So we will now leave it up to comments and questions from members of the RAC to Randy and his team. I do ask that if you decide to speak, please raise your hand if you are on the system, and just when called, say your name and which jurisdiction you're part of. Even if you're an at-large member, just mention that, whether you're from Virginia, DC, or Maryland. So with that, I will open the floor to anyone that may have a question or comment for Mr. Clark. Yeah, is there anyone online? Is that Phil? Okay, Phil? Oh, Phil, sorry, you are muted. Phil, we're going to temporarily wait. 1 second.
See if you can get closer to your microphone, Phil.
Okay, is this any better?
Oh, okay. We can hear you now, Phil.
Okay, it's Phil Posner, Arlington, Virginia. And I also chair the Accessibility Advisory Committee, which you'll come to visit next Monday during Bus Rail. And Patrick Sheehan is a member of the RAC and is the AAC representative. I have been impressed with your tweets as you travel around, and I have been tweeting back to remind you about fares, since you bring it up quite frequently. And with all the work that is going on right now, the major input we have gotten from the disability community is trying to understand what the fares really are. They travel either on bus, rail, or Metro Access, and Metro Access fares are generated by the fare calculator, which generates the least expensive comparative trip during any particular hour, and then doubles it. The problem has been is the data in the fare calculator is updated once a month. And so when there's lots of construction going on, and there are a lot of shuttle buses going on and other things, they are dealing with the calculation of a perfect universe as opposed to what's really happening. And so we routinely have people coming in and saying they pay twice as much going to the same place as coming home from the same place on the same day. On subsequent days, the same thing is often reversed. In fact, when you were inaugurated, Denise Rush who spoke with you at that meeting, paid $6.50 to get to you and $2 to go home. And so what they have asked for is just something consistent. And right now on the weekends and after 9:30, it's a flat $2 fare. And so that's pretty predictable. That's fantastic. And the request has always been to look at doing that 24/7. And the reality is it would actually increase fare box recovery for WMATA. Because right now, our latest numbers on Metro Access show that 2/3 of the ridership are paying minimum fare. Only 1/3 are paying maximum fare. So if we pick a fixed fare between 0 and $6.50 that everybody pays, then fare box recovery will be better and the ridership will actually be able to financially prepare. And that's the complaint that people say. Many of our disability customers are on fixed incomes, some on Social Security disability, which is not very much. And so they really have to plan ahead as to where and when they can go. And so knowing ahead of time that is going to be the same every time they go, wherever they go. So I've spoken a lot, but I've just responded to your tweets. So keep on tweeting, and thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Phil. And sorry, can't recall if I replied or not. Some days I get a fair amount of tweets. So if I haven't, I apologize. And what I'm trying to bring about that is just, this engagement and transparency approach at Metro. So, I'll put one out here about the RAC meeting later as an example. But to your point about fares, I think, I said this at the MVTC meeting the other day. I think it's pretty clear to everyone that Metro maybe has the most complex fare structure on planet Earth. In transit, right? It's just not analogous to any other peer agency that I could think of. And that's because we have peak and off-peak, which probably really should be regular and discount is probably a more accurate term for those. Because peak is about a time and it doesn't actually relate to a time the way you would manage things. And the second is this distance-based. So we're going to bring the board some optionality around fares during this budget cycle and really have a conversation. And, we have to get the community involved in this conversation. So this might be a multi-year approach or, we get it all solved this year. So we got to figure out how to get enough fare box recovery to run the system. I think we have to acknowledge the fare box recovery pre-pandemic is not coming back. So if the fare box recovery is not coming back, by the way, ridership might come back, but fare box recovery and ridership are not the exact same. We might have different travel patterns, and we might have different people that get served at different times of day. So we might have the exact amount of riders and have totally different fare box recovery. So if we all agree that status quo isn't working, and we all agree that the fare box recovery isn't going to get back, we're going to have to all agree that change has to happen. And change is hard for most people because it means compromising on things. But that's what good public policy is, laying out transparently what options are, and ultimately the board will have to make that decision. But we have to come up with, what is fair from, if you will, a Title VI point of view. There's a Title VI aspect to this. There's a jurisdictional aspect to this. There is I feel strongly that someone that takes the bus or the train that is doing concessions at a Caps game or going to a Caps game as an example, should be able to get great frequent service as reliable as someone that's taking, going to a federal job at 8:30 in the morning. We need to figure out how to serve all customers. And I think in some ways, coming out of the pandemic is going to be good for the transit industry. We might have a rough patch here for a period, but transit as a urban regional kind of value is going to be better longer term because it's going to force us as agencies and as an industry to stop looking at it a certain way. So I think, to that point, on the access piece, I'm not as familiar as I want to be. I'm going to be spending a fair amount of time on the access kind of area inside the organization coming up. But I think it's pretty clear that the word predictability is a fair term, and we got a fair as in FAIR, if you will, and we got to figure out how to make things as predictable for all of our customers. And someone with a disability, we should especially be leaning into that area, because if we can make the system fully accessible, and I mean fully accessible way beyond what ADA means, fully accessible like comprehensively, systematically, then everyone gains from that as well. So thank you, Phil, for your point. We have work to do on that, and we look forward to engaging the Access Committee and obviously the RAC as we go forward.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Phil. And what I'll actually be doing is I'll actually be calling on each member to introduce themselves. And if they would like to comment or ask a question, then they can do so then, or afterwards if something comes up with the course of the meeting. So Cole.
Thank you, Brian. Cole Stout, I represent the District of Columbia. I live up in the Petworth neighborhood. I work just across the train tracks right here, so it was quite the journey to get here tonight. But I kind of, when I joined the RAC, when I was talking to Brian and Brian about the kind of the social circles I run in, is usually, folks who are their mid-20s to mid-30s who live mostly in the district and will choose Metro on a convenience basis. To get maybe to or from work or for social activities. Then I also have my work community across the way here who have varying commutes, whether that's a VRE transfer or coming in from the MARC, Union Station, over to here. And so I kind of get two sides of the story. And I would say for me personally, like the rail service, I've noticed great improvements, good consistency. Obviously it's not to where it was pre the 7K issue. And I've noticed the changes in the communications in the last 4 weeks. I'm super active online, so I've seen it, and it's been nice to see the main WMATA account starting to engage a bit more than the Metro Rail Info. I think really, I brought this up at the last RAC meeting, but we didn't have the staff here, so I think I'll bring it up again. Just one of my things I've noticed the most is I take buses at all times of the day, whether that's early morning 4 a.m. trips, going to the gym, or making a transfer to the rail on my way home from work, or even late night on a weekend. So it's 2 a.m. on the way home from somewhere. And I think especially you can get late night service when the live tracking seems to not be occurring with the consistency that it happens during the day and so I'm not sure what might be happening there, but when you have less service and it's not a bus every 12 minutes, that can be a lot more disruptive. And I noticed quite a few more people standing at the bus stop than I would expect at 2 or 2:30 in the morning, who rely on that and who may be counting on live tracking when you only have scheduled data on the ETA on the website. I think it's just one thing I've noticed as I've really started paying attention since I joined the RAC earlier this year. Just one of the things that I wanted to kind of try to elevate to the staff level.
Well, Cole, thank you. My first comment would be stay between mid-25 and mid-30s living in the district and enjoy being out at 2:30 because I'm in bed by 10. So first of all, enjoy that. Number two, I appreciate the comment that, especially recognizing Barbara and the comms team. And then obviously Greg can take this note back and we can figure out from a quality control point of view, is it our app we're having a data issue with? Is it our signs? Is it the actual, are we dropping trips? Is there something going on there? So the more specificity you could give us, the better too, in following customer experience, right? So is it one route that's a problem versus other routes? Is it one corridor? We might have a comms issue and there's a gap in the algorithm or something. So, the more you can get us into detail, but Greg can take this and kind of do some QA on this and especially look through the night supervisor reports and see how we're kind of really managing that service. Because obviously, when you get into less frequency, that trip, the importance of that trip becomes really, really important for a customer. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up.
Awesome. We'll now move to Pat, who is joining us via Teams. Pat?
Thank you very much, Brian. Sir, Randy, this is Pat Sheehan from Montgomery County. Along with Phil, I'm a member of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. I'd like to say kudos to a group that Phil and I work with, ADA programs, and the folks that they represent. There are a couple good programs going on, a couple good things that they're working, and they do a great job increasing accessibility throughout the system. One of the things that they're working on is ensuring that the websites are meeting ADA Section 508 standards. They've been working on the websites for the last year or so. As a matter of fact, I was just involved with a couple of sites where they have made major improvements and brought us in to help test the sites and make sure that they are accessible. The ability of the disabled community to come in and test whether they're fare card machines, websites, access to the 8,000 series cars, and give input at the beginning is something that's critical, something that we have actually gotten used to over the last 10, 15 years that we've been doing this. So we're hoping that that continues. Another project that is out there and being worked on is the Waymaps project, which is going to allow internal GPS for the WMATA system. That actually is a program that the blindness community nationwide is looking at, and they are interested in how that is going to come out over the next couple of years. It's an initiative that was put together between Verizon, Waymaps, the American Council of the Blind, so it's getting a lot of good attention. And then the third area that I think a lot of people are looking at within the Virginia, DC, and Maryland, Montgomery County area is the installation of what's called floating bus stops. You've got some people within your organization that are working on that, particularly on the bus side. We have done some work in Montgomery County, and we're sharing that work and results with folks at WMATA. It is a safety issue, particularly if you are a blind rider like myself, to try to find these bus stops that are located in the middle of the streets. And what we want to try to do is to put something together regionally so that we can show the rest of the United States that what we're putting together as far as pedestrian safety access is something that can be done regionally and replicated throughout the rest of the United States. So we're getting a lot of good cooperation. Appreciate you being here, and certainly appreciate the cooperation that you are showing to the RAC. And I've been on the RAC for a number of years, and I've also been with the AAC for a number of years, and that really bodes well for the disability community, ridership community, and WMATA in general. So appreciate your cooperation, and we look forward to working with you, both on the RAC and AAC. Thank you, sir.
Pat, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Looking forward to working with you as well. Thank you for recognizing the work of the staff. As the leader of the organization, it really, I enjoy so much, whether it's seeing a tweet or a public comment like this about the work of the staff. We have a great group of people here that are working really hard, sacrificing weekends and nights and holidays, and love what we do and deliver for the community. So it really, I don't think the community at large realizes how important it is to a staff member to feel value from the community. So I really, really appreciate that. I'm a little familiar with the Waymaps program, and I know we're working through that. And the floating bus stop is obviously something we have to get right. And so appreciate the feedback you have from that, and we got work to do on that topic for sure. But there's a lot to do together, and you have my commitment. Accessibility to me, I really do believe, has to be much bigger than ADA. Brian and I, we've talked about that we want to elevate accessibility here actually at WMATA. When I was at the MBTA, there was actually a position called Assistant General Manager of System-Wide Accessibility. And we still got some ways to think through this, but the idea is we need to bring that level of importance at the executive level, that accessibility is not meeting a law, it's about the intent. And the intent is that it's access for everyone, and that's whether you do a public meeting and we have different, we could have sign, we could have information on our stations that are multilingual, a website as you mentioned, obviously things like floating bus stops, 8000 series car designs. It is holistic, and it's also how someone may use an elevator. Should an elevator be glass? So it provides more safety and security. How does someone with a stroller get through the system? How someone with luggage get through the system? How someone that might be elderly that has a grocery cart get through the system? All of those elements are how do we make the system the best for everyone to use. So thanks again, Pat.
Thank you so much. Emma.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. My name's Emma Wormser. I represent Washington, D.C. I frequent the Green Line as well as the Orange, Blue, Silver to get to work every day. I guess the one question I have is I've seen a pretty big uptick recently in fare evasion. I'd say like pretty significant in the last year, and I just want to sort of draw your attention to it and see if there are any plans for WMATA to address it. Thanks.
Well, hi, Emma. Thank you. So, I mean, I've heard loud and clear at every meeting read I've been to. I will tell you, internally, staff are fairly frustrated with the topic. If you went to a station manager, it's probably the #1 thing they talk about. And Phil mentioned online with Twitter. A good example is I have a lot of people tweet all day long that say the station manager won't do anything with fare evasion. Maybe we just have to clarify. The station manager is not allowed to do anything with fare evasion, and they're not supposed to do anything with fare evasion. So there's a patchwork of kind of, I will call it, there's a patchwork of legal regulations around this region regarding what we can and can't do. So, there's parts of the jurisdictions that is still criminal. There's parts that are only civil. There's parts that are civil for $50. There's parts that are civil for $100. The district actually has no criminal, but we're working really collaboratively on a civil process that wasn't there before. So it's really a patchwork of stuff. So what we have to do on that is twofold. We have to acknowledge that it exists. Is it the most important thing at Metro? Probably not, right? I mean, we got to get the frequency and the reliability to be there for the community to use the system. But it's a real thing. And, I get a lot of tweets about different people that say, hey, why don't you just make the system free? Well, first of all, it's not Randy Clark's transit system, right? I'm the general manager. I'm not a dictator. Number two, that's not to say I don't believe, I fundamentally believe we should never say free transit. We might want to say fare free, and that's a policy decision that, places like in Berlin and Germany are really moving that way because they want to reach environmental goals. And that's okay, but that involves a community conversation around fare policy. That's why fare evasion, I don't really talk about fare evasion, I talk about fare policy, and fare evasion is part of fare policy. So as a region, we're going to have to come to grips with the earlier comment I made. If fare box recovery is not going to require or be the same, what fare structure and model do we want as a region to have? And some people want no fares, and other people want high fares. There's pros and cons to all of these models, but we're going to have to work through that as a region and balance off, because without money, we can't run the system. So we have to ground everyone. Money, whether, we can hate capitalism forever. It doesn't change the fact that we need money to run the system. And we have to drive that from X amount of revenue sources, and one of them is fares. So we have to work on fare evasion, because also fare evasion does bring some orderliness a little bit around the system as well. Now, I don't want to get down a rabbit hole about, I'm not talking like broken windows and getting all into that, but there is some element of people wanting, other customers and other riders, if you will, want to see someone pay their fair share. I've heard that loud and clear. The other thing we have to be really aware of is for everyone that evades a fare that can pay, you're actually hurting us from an equity point of view. Because if we have no money, we're going to cut bus routes and we're going to cut rail service. And people that need the service the most are generally proportionally lower income, and in this region, actually, people of color. So if we want to actually run the most progressive transit system to do the most equitable good in our region, we need to have the right amount of revenue to do that. And therefore, I believe that the people that, like me, that can pay, should pay, and maybe we need to work on programs for people that can't pay. So like in Austin, where we set up a program called Equifare, and we kind of basically leveled it and said, if you were on public housing or SNAP or those types of things, you got a different fare than other people. That's a model. We have fare capping technology. That's a way to go about that topic as well. So a long way to get at, yes, thank you, Emma, it's definitely a topic. Right now we're working on the gates. I think it's fair to say that the gates are amazing from a technology point of view, but they're probably not the perfect design, and I think we've acknowledged that. And so the staff is looking at some various prototypes to just cut down I will call it the ease of fare evasion. We're never gonna have a system in the world that is 100% no fare evasion, and otherwise that's a prison, right? And that's not what we're not about. But it's probably too easy right now to fare evade. I mean, I could walk in stride across the gate. And so we're working on ways to do that. And then over time here, we're working on some warning and citation stuff. So hopefully that answers your immediate question, Emma. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Emma. Mihaela.
Hi, I'm gonna keep my camera off because I'm recovering from COVID, and COVID is not a pretty sight. Hi, good evening. I'm Mahalia Fernando, a RAC member from Maryland. I live in Prince George's County, and I take the green and yellow lines most often. So I'm one of the weekday commuters that Metro lost during the pandemic because I now permanently work from home. I work in outdoor advocacy and active transportation and don't drive, so I now rely on Metro to get to places like mountain bike trailheads or parks. And the number of runners, hikers, and cyclists in the region really exploded during the pandemic. And I think that's a great potential portion of the population to cater to when it comes to finding new customers. And that could include putting places of outdoor recreation on maps or shifting marketing a bit to include people who may not be commuting weekdays to get to work anymore, but using Metro to get to places to recreate. I think Metro has been doing a great job engaging with its users, particularly on social media. So kudos to the communications team. As brought up earlier, I've also had issues with using both Google Maps and Nextbus when it comes to times for trains and buses. I've found that in my experience, particularly on the 83, 86, and F4 buses, as well as the yellow line, the times would just randomly shift and buses would never arrive. So I don't know if that's just like a syncing issue. I'm pretty sure my app's up to date. But yeah, thank you so much. And it's really nice to meet everyone tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Mihaela. Hope you feel better soon. Thank you for recognizing, again, like I said earlier, the customer service. I'm sure Barbara will get a big smile here next to me because she's got multiple kudos, so she'll be in looking for a raise tomorrow. So thank you for recognizing the comms team. On the apps, obviously we don't control the third-party apps, but they're pulling data from our system. So we obviously got to dig into this kind of, I assume it's all GT via FS, right? And so all of our data feeds kind of feed these other systems. So I don't know if we have a comms issue, a data integrity issue, or it's working well and the apps have an algorithm issue, which wouldn't be ours. But let us do a deep dive on that and see if we can find any actual issues. And thanks for identifying a couple places. On the new customers, well, I mean, I'm an avid runner and cyclist, and I agree that the region is just an amazing place to live, right? And that's what's actually so special here. You can get the parks and all of that. So I think that folds into, Barbara and I have been talking a little bit about how to kind of add signage and kind of wayfinding and other elements to connect people to destinations. So if you really look at the system and you take a step back, right? And if you pretend you're a visitor for the day, your experience using Metro versus someone that lives here is pretty different. Because it's very robotic what people do here, right? You watch people on a platform on a rail station, they're used to their commute. They're like, I come from, I don't know, King Street, and I get to LaFont. They know where they want to stand, and they know where they're getting off, right? And if they're transferring, they know where to hit the escalator to do, like, and that's great because they're doing that thing every day. If you show up at National Airport, I would encourage, you know, like I told the team, I encourage some of the team members, watch someone new showing up at National Airport. They show up and they're like, I have no idea what to do. The fare table is intimidating. Our fare machines are certainly not modern. And they look at the map and most people go, I'm trying to go downtown. And they're like, do I go yellow? Do I do this? And then, I mean, it's slightly intimidating. We have to bring ease of use to the system. And I think, Mahela, that's what you're getting at, right? This ease that you can get where you want to get by using Metro. The bus system is naturally intimidating because it's a bunch of numbers and letters that generally don't mean anything to anyone, right? So the NS, well, I guess that was cut, so maybe a bad example I brought up, but I've used to use that when I lived here. If you take a certain bus, if you don't know where that bus is going and what stuff you can access with that bus, that's a challenge. So I challenged the team on the bus network redesign. How do we also not just care about where the buses are going from the network point of view, how are we labeling our buses so the community can feel comfortable knowing, oh, that goes to the Kennedy Center. That's where I want it to go. That's not hard to get to the Kennedy Center. If I want to get to Rock Creek and go hiking, I could go to Woodley Park and I could go down Culvert Hill and I'm in, you know, and on and on and on. So I really like what you're bringing to the table, which is, and some of the systems, like London has a really good map on the district line, I guess, and the Jubilee. We'll go with the district for sure. And the idea is you could see the 3D element of where you are versus where you are on the surface, and making it very easy to see. So kind of like where the museums are, where the parks are, that kind of stuff. So we're gonna try to work on, like, we actually might have a little contest coming up in not too distant future related to some mapping and some other stuff. We wanna get the community to help us with this topic, because the more eyes and ears on this, the better it's gonna be. So really cool topic you brought up, and not gonna change tomorrow, but we have to put some muscle behind it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Charmaine's not here, right? Jose is also not here. Michael.
Thanks, Brian. Excuse me. Sir, I just wanted to thank you for the passion that you've brought. It's very evident as you're speaking, the passion you bring to transit and to improving the system, and also the knowledge and the passion of your staff members here. I can see when you're nodding along and smiling, so it's very refreshing, and you know, it's great. And I also appreciate your willingness of you and the staff to assist us as the RAC in kind of working as we kind of engage in you know, potential, you know, projects or for outreach and information and input gathering from the riders, or as customers, as you call them, so that we can all work together to ultimately present our potential solutions to various issues and input of the riders directly to the board and all interested parties, which of course includes you and the staff. So, you know, by way of background, I live in Herndon, so I live fairly close to the Wheelie-Reston Metro station, so I take the Silver Line every day to Federal Triangle, and I'm doing that for a long time. And, you know, I think the Western Fairfax County and soon to be Loudoun County, it doesn't seem to get as much play, or I guess talk about, as some of the more closer to the inner core. And so I'm talking to people out there in my own personal experiences out in Western Fairfax County, and really, you know, people talk about, yeah, fare evasion and things like that, but out there, that's not really, I mean, we all see it, but it's kind of like, the bigger issue that people will always say, there's two issues, are the wait times, the headways, and the inconsistency. A quote that's in various terms that I've heard has been, there's always something with Metro. When you think it's going to get good, there's a meltdown, something happens, and it takes away, whether it's the 7000 series or just anything you can think of we've experienced over the years. And so it's a deterrent for a lot of people, and people say, oh, because, right now it's 15 minutes, which has been going pretty well. But then I looked at Smart Trips, on my dashboard just to see, it used to be 42 minutes was kind of the ideal, my ride from Wheelie Rest into Federal Triangle where I go. And my average is now up about 53, 54 minutes, as high as 64 minutes. And times have actually been pretty good, at least in the last month or so. So it seems like it's always a long ride. And then as you factor in Loudoun County, the ride's going to get even longer because for people out where I live, it's different from everywhere else. I can only speak for mine. Is that things are a lot more spread out than the inner core. So you have to drive to a parking spot, whether a lot or something like that, because most people don't live right on the metro. And a lot of us have children. We're kind of the opposite of what Cole was talking about, where in their 40s, in the suburban life, we have children and families, and the first casualty of the plan is the plan. So we try to time it, but then taking a kid to school or something like that, and then get to the metro, and then you always run into that issue of, do I sprint for the train or do I just wait for the next one? And then you're waiting 15 minutes or longer, then you got the long ride. And that's kind of what we deal with out there. And the timing adds up with the parking, then the wait times, and then the ride's probably 10 minutes longer than normal. And then it's kind of like, and you see the cars on 66 kind of zooming by, or the tollway, and you're kind of like, staring at it. And it just, and again, I'm not picking on anything, I'm just saying that this is people, again, the input that I've gathered in my own personal experience, you see it, and it really, the word that we always think of is a deterrent. And then in weekends, when you live out in that way, it's always, a lot of people will say, I don't even consider Metro for the weekends. And I think that's a shame, because, if the timeline is, if you're waiting forever, and you never know when you have kids and family or something like that, it's just a really big hassle when you can drive. So I guess the question, that's a long way of saying is there a reasonable target that can be conveyed, to the people in Western Fairfax, as well as Loudoun, particularly in advance of the Silver Line extension, where a reasonable time for, I guess, headways of what the target's going to be. Is it going to be, for weekdays, is it going to be under 10 minutes or something like that? And for weekends, would it be 15 minutes, something reasonable? At the same time, we've run into the issue over the years of, there's always some kind of construction, on the metro during the weekends, which I understand why. It makes a lot of sense, but oftentimes that means that the Silver Line, there's some kind of shuttle, which, just makes it, what's the point? And so, which kind of builds into the perception that the weekends, there's no point of taking the Silver Line downtown or something like that. So, just wondering if there's a way to convey a target, if there is a target, for what the ultimate, or I guess the headways will be for weekdays and weekends.
Yeah, so Mike, great point. And I guess that goes back to my earlier comment, which we know frequency right now is not enough. So we did announce Tuesday, I guess yesterday, that we come on the 12th, we're lowering frequency. So on the silver specifically, the benefit's gonna be on the weekend, it goes from 20 to 15. So still perfect? No, but definitely an increase. We are working real hard. Mike specifically and the rail team are working, I will tell you, they're 28/7, I mean, whatever extra hour or minute of the day. They're working hard on 7Ks. They've done, quite frankly, just an amazing job of keeping the legacy fleet out on the system. They've taken trains that were basically mothballed and got service for the community. And there's a lot of kudos to the rail vehicle maintenance team for all the work they've done. With that said, we obviously need to get better service. So, Mike, I don't have it in front of me. I think we are budgeted this year. I feel like it's 12 minutes on silver, I think is the budget. And obviously we got to get back to getting to that. So our goal is to bring more 7Ks back. We're working really close with WMSC. We have to get that right, obviously. And then we got to get through this next construction project, this big diversion that we're doing for the yellow line. Hopefully at that point, we're going to be at a point where we get a little bit more fleet and we just keep moving that process forward. We're going to do everything we can to communicate that and gain predictability. And that goes into, working towards the Silver Line opening as well. So, I know people are a little frustrated. There's no question. There's a value in obviously taking transit, but there's the environmental benefit. There's actually a cost benefit, but we got to be time competitive too for a lot of people. And right now that may not be the case at all times. So we're working on that. So unfortunately, Mike, I don't have like a specific on this date, it's going to be this, but we are working real hard to get to that clarity for the community on the Silver Line. We're also going to be doing some work holistically, like I mentioned earlier, putting some options together for the board on what all the service should look like all over the place, right? The challenging thing with what we call BOS, a blue, orange, silver, is the core. Obviously, you got the Roslyn kind of tunnel, right? So you get the limitation there, but you're actually running a ton of service between Roslyn and Stadium Armory. And so anyone outside of that piece can get less service. I mean, obviously up to Paul's Church, you got the 2 lines. But the challenge is Metro was built to do 2 things at the same time. And we're really like an urban subway system, but we're also a commuter rail system. And, if you were in a place like I was, say, Boston or other communities like that, the distance you would have in parts of Virginia, if I told you we're going to get a train every 12 minutes, you'd say, that's the best service I've ever heard of. Because it's commuter rail service. It's a long distance. But we also got to be reality that the community has had a different level of expectation for a long time. We also have a community that everyone likes a single seat ride here. That's not normal. Like we're a very unique transit system on the volume of single seat rides probably per overall system. People are really accustomed to that. Hence why even the design of the vehicles are they're designed for people sitting to go long distances. That is counterintuitive to someone that's getting, after a Nats game or a concert. Then all of a sudden the vehicles don't work the same way, right? So we got to figure out how to always do 2 things at the same time, balance the, if you will, the more suburban commutes with the urban. And part of that's going to be these challenges with trade-offs too. Like people in the city want later service at night, right? And so Cole wants, Friday, Saturday night to run till 2. Yeah, exactly. but you also want more frequency. And so, that's what this challenge is going to be. So we're going to create a bunch of options and bring them to the board and have a public process to go through that. But we're going to have to figure out how to, and we have to do all that with the revenue that's available to run the system. Yeah.
Sorry to chime in, but it's so great to have the diversity of our ridership here on this committee, because everyone brings such a unique perspective and view. So really appreciate that.
Well, just to kind of piggyback off what you said, like we have some, like in Arlington, I will never consider going to Arlington on a week, Friday or Saturday night, because it's impossible to get back via Metro in a timely fashion, and Ubers or Lyfts or other ride shares are too expensive. And so you're also, the economics of, what economic benefit Metro can bring to some of these different models. If there's a quick and reliable way to connect these communities, especially, whether it's Arlington or DC and into Maryland. I don't know why I'd go to Maryland. Sorry, Maryland folks. But there's some really great stuff in Arlington or Alexandria that I just won't go to when it would be nice and bring some economic benefit to the community too.
We can also work on the trip times. I mean, going from 42 minutes to 53 minutes or 60 minutes is a pretty significant difference in a morning commute. So, of course, like Randy was saying, the reliability of the legacy fleet we're running right now is not the same as the 7K. So as we bring more 7Ks back, hopefully the reliability increases. And of course, on the Silver Line, anything downstream that happens has that effect, upstream. So hopefully we can improve that and get more consistent 42-minute commutes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Cole, I think Bryna and myself will overlook that comment about Arlington. Marcella.
Don't feel too bad. He dissed the entire state of Maryland as well. He's spreading it really around. So.
Marcella.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marcella Moreno. I am an at-large member, but I also live in Petworth. Coming to you from Boston, since that's been mentioned a couple of times. So I joined the RAC. I'm primarily transit dependent. I'm mostly a bus gal, but will also ride the yellow and red and green lines. I had to write down my thoughts because I ended up having a bunch of them. But I wanted to start off saying that I appreciate the vision that you have for Metro. There's so many things that you've mentioned that I'm really excited about. For example, the new fare gate technology being able to provide options for equitable fare policies. I've always wondered whether it's better for myself to have a monthly pass or just to pay as I go. Thankfully, I can pay into Smart Trip through work, but that's something I've thought about in the past. Another thing is I want to second Cole's point about the GTFS real-time feed. I know I've had some issues around the Petworth, Georgia Avenue station with sometimes buses not showing up and then a bus pleasantly is right in front of me. Other times it doesn't show up and that's kind of sad, but it happens. And another thing that I wanted to point out is there was a snow event earlier this year, and I think the GTFS feed was still showing scheduled trips for routes that were canceled because it wasn't safe for them to navigate, which is something that I should have taken screenshots, but I did not. And one thing that I've noticed while I'm in Boston is they're experiencing some issues with their trains, with the orange and green lines. And I've really appreciated the wayfinding and signage. So I'm glad that we talked about that today as well. And their collaboration with bike share and other modes of mobility to fill in the gaps while the trains aren't running. They have these shuttles that are parked in different spaces. And I know it's probably a headache, but as someone who has never been to Boston before, is able to sort of navigate it with a little bit of anxiety. But I think that having that focus of a user experience, hey, I've never been to DC before, how do I navigate this system will be really great because it benefits everyone really to have that fresh perspective. And yep, I won't ramble too much more.
Well, Marcella, thank you for your comments and enjoy Boston. It's wicked awesome this time of year, as they say up there. So actually, it's probably the best time of the year to visit Boston is September. So have a great time. On the signage, couldn't agree more. It's one of the things that I really want to work on, and we have, I think, something coming out relatively soon related to that. And then we have to have a really, I think, a deep, comprehensive conversation about signage. And we've explored that a little bit here today, and both that digitally and statically. How do we make sure everyone can have? Quite frankly, we got to be willing to even talk about the naming of the lines themselves. There's lots of individuals in our community that color is a challenge, and so when you just say blue line, that could be very challenging for someone and how that's marked. And that's why a lot of systems in the world have letters, alpha or numeric. So we got to put all this stuff on the table to say, what are we trying to do for the most amount of people to provide the best piece or the best service? So we're going to really work heavily on both temporary signage and I think longer term kind of signage and wayfinding. And there's a lot of digital stuff I think specifically the team is working on in that category. The feeds, the feeds are a complicated thing in transit. So we'll dig into this topic, but for instance, detours are always kind of a challenge, but there's a few agencies that have figured out how to do real-time detouring inside the feeds. There could be a bus not showing up because, sometimes in our business, I don't know what, Greg, we call them in here internally, sometimes they, ghost bus, but it's the idea that someone didn't log on properly. And when you don't have a log on properly, that bus isn't being picked up. That could be an issue, but that's actually, an operational management issue that we got to make sure that those logons. That doesn't mean now that we could have an equipment failure, and that's something different. So there's a lot of layers to that, but we've heard enough tonight that we're going to do a little deep dive on GTVS and how we're managing that. I also believe we got to figure out better places to put signage where people can know real-time information. So we're going to start exploring a little bit more. You know, Barbara and I've talked about, we got a few out there, but the kind of the e-paper at a bus stop, there's some of that we got to work on that are really great. I think even tomorrow we might talk about new signage. You know, quite frankly, wouldn't you love to see the train status before you went down an escalator? Right? I know I would. Right? So I think stay tuned. Tomorrow you might see something on that. This is all about, again, the customer experience, right? And that's why your group is so important. We need to know what people want better. And some of it's going to be unrealistic, like, oh, well, I want a train every 2 minutes. That's not happening. But there's only a couple people that will say something like that. Most people just want the escalators to work, the elevators to work. They want the real-time customer information. They want a station manager that can help them, is friendly. They want to feel safe in the environment. They want cleanliness. I mean, you know, so we're going to really focus on the basics. And I think if we can get the basics right, kind of, Mike, this goes back to you. The confidence of Metro and the credibility of Metro will rise based on how people believe that we are doing the basics right. And we'll have to work on the funding long term. And there's a lot of this complex stuff here, but we got to get the basics right before we worry about the larger stuff. That's where we're going to be focused on. So thank you, Marcella. Enjoy your time in Beantown.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Andrew. Andrew? Okay, we will move on to actually our vice chair, Daryl. Daryl? Okay, so I will go. Brian Meyer, I'm the chair of the Riders Advisory Council, and I represent Virginia. Specifically, I'm live in Arlington, Virginia. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Thank you again for coming and speaking to us. I don't want to be too redundant, but we do really appreciate hearing from leadership, especially when they engage with public bodies and our customers. So I really value that. I do have a few questions, and they vary in degree of specificity. Recently, and you mentioned this, is fare evasion. Of course, only one part of fare policy, and I'm very thankful that the board and the leadership was able to implement a series of fare policy changes this September as well as last year to bring, $2 flat fare on the weekends after 9:30, the discount for the bus or rail transfer, the discounted monthly passes. Those are all fantastic. As it pertains to fare evasion, and I don't know whether these are official WMATA numbers, so if they're not, feel free to deny them, but I've seen anywhere from a few million to upwards of $25 million in lost fare. I don't know if you can verify that number, but is that both Metro Bus and Metro Rail combined?
Brian, I don't have that number with me. We'll get that and circle back to the RAC, the most recent numbers, because there was a report to the board with kind of estimates. So, and remember, there's a methodology used in transit. The good thing is the new rail gates at the station have much more advanced technology. So we'll go from kind of an assumption to probably more specific. But then buses kind of differ because an operator clicks a button or is supposed to be clicking a button. So let us get that, and we'll get something back to the RAC on kind of where staff believes that number currently stands.
Right, and then I think you may have already answered this question, but it seems as though while we're going to try to capture as much of that as possible, given our fair policy principles that the board has approved and that we've discussed, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, a bulk of that fair capturing will occur on the rail side.
Well, I think crawl, walk, run, right? So it's easier for us to go mitigate fare evasion on the rail side than the bus side because we have 1,600 buses getting around. So, and we made it clear, the operator's job is to drive that bus and do the best customer service safely. It's not to get into a confrontation over a fare. We're not going to have an operator. Listen, 99% of our customers are the best, and we want them on the system, but we have 1% that are not acting that we'd all expect in a normal society. And, we have bus operators that, have got assaulted, get yelled at, get treated unfairly. And just like all of you, you shouldn't go to work and get that behavior. And we're going to try to look after our staff so they don't get that behavior as well. And I would think in society, we all would agree on that. So we're going to go after rail first, only because physically, we run a closed system, right? It's not like light rail with proof of payment. We run a closed system. So there's some physical aspects we can manage through that. And then we're going to work on kind of the next phase of that, which would be bus.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then I guess my last question, it's not really even a question unless you want to comment on it. More so just a statement of fact that much like how we helped and aided in providing comments on the FY23 budget cycle, we're looking forward to working with you on the FY24. I know that probably is daunting for some people to hear, but focusing on the operational and capital funding of our system is always a continuous conversation. And good luck. I don't know how to say it any more bluntly than that. Good luck, and specifically, kind of navigating that divide between operational expenses and revenue and jurisdictional buy-in into supporting this vital, absolutely critical transportation system that, again, millions of people ride over the course of a year.
Yeah, and I think the last point is the most important, right? And this is where the RAC plays not only a good role to help us with daily, like, hey, how can we make this place be the customer service excellence that we're all after? You all are either representatives of jurisdictions on the RAC or like you're part of the community. We need to figure out how to go from everyone agrees we want Metro to be successful, to what is the long-term predictable, sustainable funding for what the region says the goal is. And we got to get unanimity around what the goal of Metro is, right? And not kind of every few years going hand to mouth and kind of almost being quasi-contractor to multiple jurisdictions. We need to figure out what this region wants Metro to ultimately be and fund it that way versus what is the funding and then what's it do. We need to all agree what we want it to be, and I think we need to be aspirational, right? This is an amazing region, arguably one of the best, if not important regions in the world, and it's growing. It's not stagnant. This is a growing region, and people want to live here. Now, we have a housing, I would argue we have, I don't know if I go full housing crisis, but we have a housing challenge, and the housing challenge is only going to be solved. Land use is connected to transportation policy. Your economic policy is your land, and your land use policy are your transportation policy. They all go together. And so also with school, with wellness. So as a region, we care about the environment. We care about dealing with systemic inequities in the region. We care about traffic management. We care about economic development. We care about having great education. Metro needs to be great for all those things to be great. So I want us to agree on where we want Metro to be, and then how do we put the money together to make that happen versus let's figure out how much everyone has in different buckets, and then that's what Metro is. And I think you as RAC members have a great opportunity to help lead that conversation. Because that's what, if I'm out there, that's what the community wants. The community wants a Metro that works for all, not what are we just gonna do this year. Yeah, so thank you, Brian.
Most definitely, thank you so much, Randy. Are there any parting comments from members of the Riders Advisory Council? Bryna?
Well, yeah, I will take this opportunity. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks to the RAC. I mean, fantastic group. I'm just so excited about the membership. But Randy, I wonder if you and your team might outline, this has been an amazing conversation. What is the best way for the RAC to organize, to have ongoing, input, feedback, responsiveness, so that we as a group can work, hand in hand to address some of the issues you identified?
Yeah, great. That's fantastic. That's probably a great way for us to kind of wrap the meeting up, nice bow, which is, obviously, we have this meeting itself. That's one venue. We've been out doing meet the team events, right? And so I think we've had 4. Is that correct, Barbara? 4? Now we're going to take a small little break, but we're going to be back at those sometime in the fall. I don't know, it could be like late October, November. Meaning we just didn't do that once, and quote unquote, Randy and the team are never going out again. And Brian was actually out with one, so thank you for doing that. And we had Secretary Ports out with us at another meeting. So we want to get the board involved in those, but I think that's a great opportunity. Maybe we get the RAC involved as well. That might be the conduit where you all come out with us, a couple people, right? And just be able to interact with customers and go, by the way, did you know the RAC exists? Here's what we do. And would you like to get more information? And by the way, from your point of view, maybe you don't want to talk to the Metro staff. Maybe you want to tell us what the topic is and figure out, maybe we need to work on, Barbara, maybe I shouldn't ask a question just purely, but have we done, I assume, the secret shopper kind of program? Not in a long time, but that might be a great example of something that we could activate with the RAC. You guys know what I mean? Secret shopper kind of. Cole might be too young. He might not know the reference, but the idea that an anonymous person is actually being paid to go out and use the service to pick up issues, so they're not biased by being, say, a Metro staff member. Because even when we want to see stuff, you can look at the same wall 15 times and not see the crack because you see the wall so many times. And so maybe that could be a great conduit to work with the RAC to frame up a program like that, and that information flows between, to you all and to us to get the best experience. So there's, so I guess I would throw it even back to the RAC, which is, that's just a couple ideas right up, but be creative. You got a whole bunch of people here that care about the system. All I can say is we're open, so throw ideas at us. And if someone said 3 years ago we couldn't do something, I would challenge you to say, well, 3 years ago it doesn't exist anymore, and let's put it on the table today. And that should be maybe a fair give and take for how we work together. Does that, Brian, does it kind of make, yeah.
And thank you for kind of inviting us into that process. And I'm really looking forward to, some of the suggestions you came up with and that we as an advisory council will come up with to better reach out to the customers and be able to communicate that as another avenue to the board and to WMATA leadership.
Yeah, I'd love to get you, like if someone wants to do, like Greg could line up going out with a superintendent of transportation for a couple hours and do a ride along with a bus superintendent and actually see how they manage service in the street, right? Like that would be probably an amazing experience to see the complexity behind how that works throughout a shift. A medical emergency, a car crash down the street, a construction detour, and how it just, we're doing everything we can as quick as we can to safely move service. There could be some interesting stuff on the rail side to see how elevators and escalators. All people want to do is talk about elevators and escalators here. You know how hard it is to maintain 600 plus elevators and escalators here? Very, very hard. That's why these canopies are so nice.
Some of the tallest in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So, but so think about go to the Rock, go to the bus OCC, can see that. We're happy to do a control center tour for the RAC and get a chance to meet Greg and Ed and go through how operations works. And maybe we could do that. Propose a couple times. We'll work with John exactly and do that. So, go to a maintenance shop and see how we true a wheel and like things that we just do that make this thing work every day. It's a really, really interesting industry, and there's a lot of great people, and I think it gives a deeper understanding of that would probably help you in your roles.
Most definitely. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to all of those. Awesome. Any last comments from the RAC members?
All good?
Hearing none.
This is Andrew. Are y'all able to hear me?
Oh yeah, Andrew. Sorry, you can go.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I got disconnected earlier, but I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Clark, for joining us, and also appreciate your candor. I represent PG County. I used to live in DC for a long time, so I'm Green Line for life. I use the Metro to commute. I use it for social events. I use it with my family. One of the things that really attracted me to the opportunity to serve the RAC was partly I was inspired by a lot of the overseas travel that I do, especially to Asia. And I was thinking about it while I was there that, it wasn't clear to me if what I was enjoying so much about the mass transit systems over there were the flashing lights and the, hyper clean stations and the orderliness. And if it wasn't clear to me if that felt modern, or if what I was really enjoying was the fact that I could just be as lazy of a human being as I think I am. And what I mean by that is, I didn't feel like I had to work when I was not working. I didn't need to monitor anything, and I didn't need to check the Twitter feed. It just felt like kind of a passive experience and totally reliable. And so I like just the idea that I could just totally check out and not feel like it was as interactive of experience as sometimes I feel like Metro is. I don't like the drama. I like the fact there was no drama. So I sometimes feel like Metro is a lot of drama. It's clickbaity. It's always in the Washington Post for all its foibles. And so I just, kind of think that maybe modern doesn't mean it's shiny and full of tech, but rather sort of meets the requirements of what its regional population demands. And I'm hoping that other people share my view that we just really want to be lazy and not work when we're not working, and then just go home or go out or whatever. And then the other thing that you had mentioned that really resonated with me, I think some of the other folks have heard me say this in the past, is I'm concerned that Metro isn't competitive. And I agree that, there's a tendency for Metro to just be this sort of repository for donor funding from these disparate jurisdictions, as opposed to being a competitive part of the economy. And I think that's especially true when you have all these companies like bike sharing companies and scooter sharing and Uber and Lyft that have these really dynamic pricing models that are capturing a lot of market share. And maybe they're exploiting a vulnerability in the idea that we do have a sort of multi-jurisdictional problem here that creates a lot of dysfunction that Metro has to deal with. And so they're able to, let us be lazy, and we can just sort of plug in a location and, boom, someone shows up and we're there. And so they're out competing Metro. But I have to believe that, if Metro can, like you say, just sort of do the basics right, so that I can just be that lazy person. I'm willing to pay for that reliability. I'm willing to subsidize, equity pricing, just for that peace of mind that I don't have to monitor Twitter. I don't even know how to use Twitter. I don't have to, constantly interact with some sort of real-time feed to figure out if an escalator's working. And I do think that, if we're more affirmative, as an economic model, in our willingness to compete with folks that are actually competing with Metro, whether we like it or not, we can actually serve this region in a very modern way that, is unique, is local, and hopefully sort of meets the needs of our region's very unique populace. So that's all I was going to say. Appreciate your time very much, and look forward to all the things that you're going to bring to us. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate the comment. I will tell you, that's a lot to unpack, but I really do appreciate your comment. I never want to, I'm not going to go for the slogan, like, make Metro lazy again, but I think your point is very, I don't think you're going to find a group of people at Metro more than the people at this table that don't want to reduce the drama of Metro. I guarantee that, right? Trust me, none of us want to get a phone call that says this happened and we have to respond, When we had a tunnel fire my first weekend, Mike down here who runs rail, he gets home from vacation at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and he's meeting me at a tunnel at DuPont a couple hours later, and he's not even off vacation. So that's the kind of people. Yeah, and his anniversary, and his wife actually has mentioned that to me as well. So there's a lot of people here that sacrifice a lot of their lives to deliver the service. So I want the public to really understand. There's no one that sits here at Metro that goes, well, I hope we have a problem tomorrow. Trust me, we are. With that said, we have cultural topics and technical topics that we got to work through to get to that point. I've been to Asia numerous times, did some transit work over there. They are the best in the world. We're gonna do everything we can to meet to those standards. There are some differences, obviously. We tend to do a lot of politics related to infrastructure and other topics in America that don't exist in those cultures. And that's good or bad, it's just reality. We also have to be really cognizant that the land use policies are dramatically different, right? So as dense as we might think our region is, it is really not dense in comparative to like a Singapore or Hong Kong or a Tokyo. And so, but that doesn't change the fact that we need to be the best in class of maintenance practices, of training, of empowering our staff, of cleanliness, of punctuality, all of those things. So we are going to do everything we can to deliver the best service so you can be super lazy. And we're going to work on that, Andrew. But thanks for your comment. Appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And with that, I just wanted to, oh, yes.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make a comment just to the group. And first off, thank Randy as well as Brian for allowing the ops team to be a part of this committee and come and sit. Since Randy got here, he said multiple times One Metro, and Brian has kind of repeated some of the same things with ops being connected and coordinated together. So when I tell you that our teams are really working to make sure we get this thing right for the customer, that is the focus. I took a lot of really good notes here, and I know they're going to follow up, but it's important to us to get it right. So just know that we welcome the opportunity to engage with you more, and certainly when you want to set up those tours to come to the OCCs, we'll be ready to do it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming and speaking to us. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll be in touch very soon about some kind of action items moving forward. So thank you all so much. We greatly appreciate it. Perfect.